Hello everyone and welcome to a really awesome attacking game from round 9 of the 2019 Sinquefield Cup. It's Liren versus Fabiano Caruana. Really an exciting game, so let's just dive straight into it. Ding with the white pieces opens with d4, with knight to f6, c4, and you all know where this is going, e6, sorry about that, with knight to f3, and d5, the queen's gambit declined, is on the board, with knight to c3, bishop to e7, and now bishop to f4. With castles by Caruana, now comes e3 and b6, now preparing to Fianchetto the light square bishop. Bishop to d3, and only now, after white developed the light square bishop, d captures on c4, make white waste the tempo. Bishop captures on c4, and now bishop to a6, offering to trade bishops. And now you could go queen to e2. I believe this is what Shanklin played against Anand in the Tata Steel in January, but Ding prefers bishop captures on a6. Or no, bishop to e2 is a known move, but Shanklin also captured on a6 against Anand in the Tata Steel tournament. Knight captures on a6, and now queen to e2, developing the queen while attacking the knight here, and queen to c8, defending the knight with castles by Ding, and here c5 is the only move that was ever played in this position. One such notable game is Magnus Carlsen versus Hikaru Nakamura in the 2018 World Blitz Championship in St. Petersburg. But here we have queen to b7. Now it's a new move. Caruana decides to Fianchetto the queen instead. Prepare rook to c8, and then the c5 pawn will have support from the rook. And here we have a3, taking away the b4 square from black's pieces. You don't want to allow knight b4 to d5 to get this useless knight from a6 to such a nice square like d5. We have c5 by Caruana, and now knight to b5. And here, with the knight to e4, we would transpose into the Carlsen versus Nakamura game that we've mentioned, but here, rook a to c8, this is the idea Caruana prepared for this game. With b4 by Ding, bringing more pressure to the c5 square, and now knight to d5, going after the bishop here. B captures on c5, this was Ding's idea. He doesn't mind knight captures on f4, there we would see pawn captures, e captures, b captures on c5, and now rook b1, developing while threatening some discoveries. But Caruana says, okay, my knight on d5 is a good piece. I'm not really interested in your bishop on f4. I can always capture it. And b captures on c5. With rook 8 to b1 by Ding, and now rook to c6, making room for the other rook to enter the game, but also preparing rook to b6 to counter Ding's rook on b1. Bishop to e5. Ding now says, okay, you had your chance to grab my bishop on f4, now you can't have it anymore. And now if you want to get rid of it, you're going to have to push something like f6. Maybe you want to play bishop to f6, but you're definitely not capturing by playing knight captures on f4. Rook to b6, Caruana continues with his plan, and now a4, defending the knight, with knight a to c7, again pressuring the knight here, and now d captures on c5, with bishop captures on c5, and now you cannot capture on c7, even though you're attacking the knight twice, because of rook captures on b1. So here, Ding finds the very nice rook bc1, gets away from all the pressure along the b file, and now puts pressure along the c file. You can't move the bishop, as then the knight on c7 would be attacked 3 times, so you have to capture on b5. With knight captures on b5, rook captures on c5 now, and now knight back to d6, where the knight is protected by the rook. And Ding continues pushing with a5, attacking the rook. Fabi plays rook to c6, offers a rook trade, but Ding is not interested. He now wants to grab full control of the c file, and he does this by playing bishop captures on d6. So he forces Caruana to recapture. If you capture the rook, of course, bishop just recaptures, you lose a piece. So rook captures, and only now rook f to c1, and now Ding is the ruler supreme of the c file. So with h6, Fabi makes some room for the king. Ding does the same with h3, and now rook f to d8. As the c file is taken by Ding, Fabi now grabs the d file. We have knight to e5, which is an excellent outpost since you're really not getting rid of this knight unless you want to play something like f6, and you can't really get rid of it with your own knight. For example, knight e7 to g6, white just captures it and ruins your pawn structure, and also you can go knight e7 to c6 as white controls the c6 square 3 times. Sorry about that. So knight to f6 by Fabi, and now comes knight to c6. Really awesome active play by Ding. He's now preparing a6 as the rook no longer controls the a6 square. Rook 8 to d7, getting the rook out of harm's way, and now a6, attacking the queen. We have queen to b6, and here knight back to e5, attacking the rook once again, rook to d8, and now rook to c8. So what's the idea here? Queen to a5 by Fabi, first going after the knight on e5, and now f4, just keeping everything in check, asking do you maybe want to trade on c8. Fabi not interested for the moment, so rook to d2. A nice active move, pushing the queen back. Queen to f3, now the a6 pawn is no longer guarded, but first we have rook to d5. Getting the rook back. We have rook 1 to c7, and here the f7 pawn is under attack, but Caruana finds a very nice move, king to h7, and now you cannot capture the pawn. Obviously you cannot capture with the rook because you lose the rook on c8, but if you capture with the knight, it's no better. You get rook to d1 check, king to h2, and now queen to e1, and there's really nothing you can do about queen g1. I mean, it's not a win, it's a draw, because after, let's say, rook captures here, you get queen g1 check, king here, king to g3, and now queen back to e1 check. And now you have to repeat king h2, king g3, king h2, king g3, because if you play queen f2, you block, then knight e4 check, forks the queen, and wins the game for black. So after king h7, you cannot capture on f7. Ding goes king to h2, not allowing any checks. The king is much safer there. And now rook captures on c8. We have rook captures, and finally Fabi grabs the a6 pawn. Queen captures on a6. So for the moment, Fabi is up a pawn, but Ding has something else to say about it. Rook to a8. Also, an interesting move was rook to f8, going after the f7 pawn. The thing is, after knight to d7, attacking the rook and the knight, you play knight captures, rook captures, and queen e4 check. And now this was the idea. Both players missed, but chess would be a very boring game if no one missed anything, because after f5 you can simply capture rook captures on f5. And now you're threatening some nasty discoveries. Also, this would be a nice nasty discovery, because after e captures on f5, you just capture with check, queen g6, block check. Now you pick up the rook here. You're up a pawn with a very nice position. But Ding plays rook to a8. It's never too early to put a rook behind a passed pawn. Queen b7 attacking the rook, and now rook to f8 and rook to b5, offering a queen trade. So now, what do you play here? For example, you could try rook captures on f7 to go for a queen trade, but this is what Fabi wanted. Queen captures, knight captures, and a5, and you have this position where, okay, the material on the board is equal, but black has a passed a5 pawn. It's hard to say if you can push it right away. White has some knight d4 to e6 ideas where you will put a lot of pressure on the king side, so you can go knight to d5, just go after the e3 pawn, and this is much safer, and nothing for white to look for there. So Ding goes queen to f1, avoiding the queen trade, still keeping the threat of rook captures on f7 and knight captures on f7 on the board. We have queen to d5, and now comes knight captures on f7. If rook captures on f7, then rook to b7. It's a nice position for black. For example, rook captures, queen captures, and now you get queen d3 check, queen to e4, you block check, and now you have the outside pass pawn. Even if white trades, white doesn't trade, doesn't really matter. The outside pass pawn will always be very strong. So after queen d5, we have knight captures on f7 by Ding, and now knight to d7, pushing the rook back, rook to d8, pinning the knight, and now rook to b8, forcing a rook trade. We have rook captures, knight captures, and now queen to b1 check, connecting nicely with the knight on b8. You don't win a piece because, well, you can just block with queen to f5. It's interesting if king g8, then black loses the game, because first you capture on h6 with check, and after recapture, capture with check. After this, you grab this pawn with check. 4 pawns to 2, this will be winning for white. So instead, after queen b1 check, Fabi plays queen to f5. Now, after the queen recaptures the knight here, you will be guarding the a7 pawn. It's interesting what Ding plays here. Feel free to pause the video and try to find the best continuation for white in this position. While I give you a couple of seconds. For those of you who were able to do it, congratulations, you are an excellent lifter of queens. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, queen b7 is the best idea. If you capture the knight, then we already said queen captures, the a7 pawn is guarded. But here, now you're definitely asking black what you want to do here. And it's not all that easy. For example, if you push a5, just knight d6 or knight d8, and how do you save the knight? There's no saving this knight. It can't go anywhere. And the queen is unable to protect the knight. Next move, we're just going to capture it, and it's game over. So here, Fab finds knight c6. And okay, now you capture, black just captures back. We get the pretty much the same idea where Ding is very happy. You could grab a pawn here with knight captures on h6 and then recapture on c6. But Ding continues with an even better move. Knight d6, again. Black has to defend the knight on c6, otherwise you're down a piece. Queen to c5 is played, and now knight to e4, asking again, what do you want to do? If you move the queen away from the protection of the knight, then just queen captures and you guard the e4 knight, so it's not a problem. You have to be careful. If you play something like queen d5, you get knight f6 check, and you lose the queen since the g pawn is pinned. So here, probably the best idea for Fabi in this situation is queen captures on e3, just give up the knight and then go queen f4 check. The problem is white has g3 and you have no more checks. This is covered by the knight, this is covered by the knight. If queen f1, then queen c2, again you guard against any checks, and you're also threatening some discoveries. And you do have 2 pawns for a knight, but you know, like Tal says, a knight is a knight. So Fabi doesn't like his chances here. He plays queen to c2. Still keeping an eye on this knight here, but now Ding has a different idea, which also is very nice. So feel free to pause the video and try to find the winning move for Ding in this position. While I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations, you are an excellent checker with a knight. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, knight to f6 check. And now, of course, you see that king h8 is impossible due to queen c8 mate. Well, of course, once you block check, then it's mate. The knight covers h7. So Fabi had to play king to g6, but now knight to e8. And knight to e8 is just as winning, but even crazier was knight to h5, threatening the same idea. Queen captures here, and if you capture the knight, then queen captures on g7, threatening mate here. And, well, very soon black will run out of moves. Queen e2, you guard mate, but then queen f7 check, king h4, queen g6 check, threatening to capture here, and there's no defense against this. If you move the queen from the second rank, then g3 is mate. So this was one possibility, but Ding found knight to e8, which works just as fine. It's not as aesthetically pleasing, but, you know, you're about to beat Fabiano Caruana. You don't need it to be aesthetically pleasing. Queen to c3, guarding g7, but now comes e4, preparing e5 to block the queen's defense of the g7 pawn. So a5, Fabi sees that there's nothing to be done here. He just starts pushing his passed pawn. We have queen to d7, going after e6. Still keeping an eye on the knight here. Fabi continues pushing the passed pawn. Now comes queen captures on e6 check, king to h7, and now e5, blocking the defense of the g7 pawn here. Knight to d4, attacking the queen, and now queen d7, threatening mate. So king to g6, there's no way to defend the pawn. And now queen captures on g7 with check, with king to f5, and now knight to d6 check. And now if you go king e6, then queen f7 is mate. Again, we have this very nice structure that we often mention, which you should remember if you're a beginner. It will be much easier for you to locate checkmates on the board. So king captures on f4 is played, but now queen to f6 check. King to e3, Fabi escapes with his king, but now comes e6. The threat is just e7 and e8 queen. King to d3, getting out of the e-file, but it doesn't matter. e7, and it was in this position on move 57 that Fabiano Caruana resigned the game. As there are no tricks, there are no checks, there are no attempts here. Next move is just e8 queen, and then, well, you can just do whatever you want. There's no point in continuing this game. So an excellent win by Ding. We're not going to show the standings just yet, as there is another game I want to show from round 9, so we're going to discuss the standings and the tournament a bit after that video, which will follow shortly after this one. So yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Stefan Vale for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check two of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the Sinquefield Cup, continuing the Capablanca saga, checking up on your suggestions, and I will show the Benko versus Tal game that you have requested during the Tal versus Fischer video. So thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.